Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the South Kesteven series, 83 parishes surrounding the town of Grantham in southern Lincolnshire, which are full of history. Let's check one of them out. Welcome back to Lincolnshire once again, folks. Now, today we're back in South Kesteven for the first time since I did Great Ponton, which seems so long ago. Welcome to a much bigger place as we start off South Kesteven properly. This is South Witham. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. It feels good to be back in South Kesteven again. Well, it is Lincolnshire after all. This is South Witham, a village located just to the west of the A1, midway between Stamford and Grantham. The word Witham means Willow Village. It has a northern counterpart too, the much smaller North Witham, which is quite the settlement in and of itself. South Witham was first recorded in the Domesday Book as Wimme, but its history goes back much further than that. The earliest evidence of occupation was found in 1896, when workmen on the nearby railway found Bronze Age burials and a roundhouse. 24 Roman burials and a stone coffin were also discovered in a quarry too, along with a temple and a well. Both the railways and the quarries were vitally important to the village in the late 19th century and early 20th. Ironstone and limestone were both mined and quarried here, and even today one of the quarries still exists. Now, one name that crops up a couple of times as we explore this village is Ralph Tollemache. He was one of the most well-known clergymen in England, mainly because of the increasingly eccentric names he gave to his children. He was a former rector of South Witham, and it's down to him that the village has its school. Here you'll find 2 shops, a church, a village hall and a playing field that plays host to 2 football teams. And it all sits to the south of a former Knights Templar Preceptory. Let's go exploring, guys! We begin on Mill Lane with a short drive through what looks like a fairly nondescript clump of trees. In actual fact, those trees mark the route of an old railway line. It was a branch line built in 1898 that ran to Buckminster. Its purpose was industrial, transporting iron ore for the Holwell Iron Company. It ran from a main line, also now abandoned, which connected Melton Mowbray to Spalding via Bourne. That main line passed by one of South Witham's quarries. Quarrying began in this area when the railways were built in the 1890s. Limestone has been extensively quarried here ever since. This limestone quarry off Mill Lane was extended southwards in the 1960s, obliterating part of the former railway line. Ironstone mining also played a part in the area's economy from 1944, but it was short-lived, eventually ceasing in 1964. Our main walk begins at the church dedicated to St John the Baptist. Together with the churches at North Witham, Stainby and Gunby, it forms part of the Witham Group. It occupies an elevated position and is the most prominent building on Church Street. Unfortunately, it doesn't have an open door policy, so the inside is only accessible during services. In the churchyard we have a war memorial, a richly carved grey Celtic cross made of Cornish granite. It was unveiled in 1921. Now, it will come as no surprise to learn that the area around the church is the oldest part of the village, and much of it is designated today as a conservation area. There are 9 listed buildings within that area, and this church is one of them, listed Grade 1. It's the oldest one too, dating back as far as the 12th century. In the 19th century, the vicar here was that man, Ralph Tollemache. His eldest son, Sir Lionel, became Lord Tollemache in 1935. Okay, so at this point, just beyond the church, I had a choice. Do I go to the right or do I go straight on? I'm going to go to the right and go that way first. The building behind me with all the scaff on it, that is the Angel Inn. Looks like it's undergoing some renovation, some restoration of some kind. Let's keep walking. Now we're heading for the High Street. This is the end of Church Lane, which follows a stretch of water for the most part. It's called Fishpool Dyke and runs into the River Witham, which splits the village into 2 distinct pieces. The High Street is a shallow hill, and at the top we come to a pub. This is named the Blue Cow, and it's had that name since around 1800. Lots of things around here have blue in their name, and that's all to do with nearby Buckminster. We'll get to that episode soon. By using a footpath at the back of its car park, we found our way to Station Avenue. When the main railway line between Melton and Spalding was still in use, South Witham had a railway station. It was located at the southernmost extent of the village on the road to Thistleton in Rutland. It was Midland Railway property, and it once had a goods yard which could hold as many as 50 wagons. It closed in 1959, along with most of the line. Okay, so I've got to make this quick because this is a fairly busy road and I'm stood right in the middle of it. You can see here, you've got the railway line there, the old railway line that we spoke about earlier, the railway bridge. This house on the right here is the old station. Let's carry on. At the end of Thistleton Road is the head office of Bullimores, a local sand and gravel firm. Over the road, there's a former Congregationalist chapel. This was turned for a time into a vintage motorcycle museum, and its owner claimed to be the safest driver in Britain. That's a bold claim. He sold his motorcycle collection, 80 of them, in 2003. Back to the High Street, and now we pass Market Court. I've no idea if South Witham ever had a market charter, so I'm unsure as to the naming of this street. There's no mystery around this building though. It's South Witham's old post office. The village no longer has a permanent post office, but you can still access post office services here thanks to a mobile service which stops in 2 locations. One of these is at a shop on Great Close, which we'll see later. The other is outside South Witham Village Shop on Water Lane, and that's the building you can see in your shop now. This isn't your average shop, mind you. Here's why. It's a little bit more than just a shop, this. Have a look at this, look. Hot food served Monday to Thursday, 7 AM until 11. Freshly filled rolls served daily from the counter. And there's all the opening times. The brick building after the shop is the church hall, which looks like it's undergoing some renovation at present. I could find nothing more about this building. Next door is the village's school, South Witham Academy, another building with ties to Ralph Tollemache. He would build this, South Witham's first and only school, in 1879. It was originally a public elementary school, and it was enlarged in 1899. It eventually became South Witham Community Primary School, and then South Witham Academy in 2016. Now we've turned left into the village hall's car park. The hall is the village's community hub and hosts a range of events, from coffee mornings to fitness clubs. Behind the hall is a playing field. South Witham's football club, Witham FC, play here, as do Witham Wanderers in the Newark Football Alliance. There's a playground here as well. We can follow a path from here that crosses the River Witham and runs into a housing estate, which has its own bits of history. Okay, once past this recreational area and playground, you're then heading up into the northernmost reaches of South Witham, which is very residential. So I imagine this is going to be a lot of houses and not much else in these next couple of sections. We'll see, we'll see. There could be something of note. I just don't know until I get there. As I suspected, this estate is greatly residential, but the name of this street, Templar's Way, is a reference to another piece of South Witham history. It's all to do with South Witham Preceptory, which stood in what is now a field to the north of the village, known as Temple Hill. Commonly known by its simpler name, Witham, it was one of the smallest Knights Templar preceptories in England, and it was founded sometime before 1164. It's been largely under pasture since it was abandoned in 1308. The other street of note on this estate is Great Close, which is where we find that other shop, part of which doubles as a fish and chip takeaway. The mobile post office stops right here. Great Close also has a park, and this is it, running behind the housing estate to the north and to the south of Moor Lane. This whole estate was built in 1966 by the RAF. It was designed to house servicemen from nearby RAF Cottesmore, but ended up populated by those from RAF Luffenham instead. When built, it trebled the village's size. So you see, it's like having two villages in one. You've got the older core to the south and all this newer, more modern stuff to the north. And between the two, well, that's where I'm about to go right now. On Moor Lane, there's an interesting area which is partially allotments, cue the cheers from the fans, and partly a cemetery. Rather an odd setup, but there we are. Now for the long walk back down North Witham Road. First up, we've got a bus stop. Two services stop here, the 183 and the 28, the latter of which runs to Grantham. Over the road is another cemetery. No allotments in here, this one is more your standard burial ground. There are some Commonwealth war graves in this one though. The further south you go, the more and more the road starts to narrow before we hit the old village core once again. There's a couple of things left to see on Church Street. One of them is an old Wesleyan chapel which was founded in 1812 and closed in 1952. It's now a house. Our last landmark, on the walk at least, is a surgery. This is what's called a branch surgery, part of the larger Colsterworth medical practice. It's open from 10:30 until 12, 2 mornings a week, Mondays and Thursdays. Okay, as you can see, we are back to the beginning almost, because there's the church behind me. I've just got one more thing to do here in South Witham, and that's take you to the site of the Knights Templar Preceptory, which is up to the north of the village. To do that, I need to get into the car because it's not something I can actually walk to. I've got to drive to it. So I'm going to head through the car park of the Angel Inn, back to the car, and that will finish off this episode. Okay, so now we're at the north of the village. We've come up this road here. We've come past a little industrial estate, and here on the left, just before I show you the site of the preceptory, there's something else that's industrial. I think it's, I'm not sure if it's some kind of like oil pump or something. Not totally sure. We'll have a quick look. Got time, so I may as well. Let's see. There you go. I don't know what that is. I'll be honest. Oh, it's a gas. It's something to do with gas. So yeah, just next to this is where you'll find the field where South Witham Preceptory was. Now, the information board about this is in the churchyard. I think it's probably the best place for it, to be honest, because I would imagine the farmer who owns this field wouldn't want you to be obviously coming up here and investigating it. But this is the field anyway. It's right next to that little gas station thing, whatever it is. And there you go. That's the site of South Witham Preceptory. That's where it once stood. So there you go. That is the parish of South Witham. Time to move on to the next one, which isn't far away. It's over there. So to finish, we continue from the site of the Preceptory along North Witham Road, an undulating country lane which will take us to South Witham's northerly neighbour. In next week's episode, we're going to be able to get up close and personal with the River Witham, and we're even able to drive across it. See you there next week. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.